Hello, I chased the weasel round the cobbler's bench, but stuff still happened. So what's up? It's been a very normal go of it for the US government. Let's just take a look at some of the things that are going on around our esteemed administration. We'll start with some aerial acrobatics. Last week, the FAA just randomly announced a 10-day closure of the airspace around El Paso. El Paso, Texas, it's on the border, like the restaurant, and no one knew what the hell was the reasoning for this. Like, it was just a sudden closure. 10 days, no air travel out of El Paso. Sorry, guys. And then that 10 days ended a few hours later. They were like, psych. So about that 10-day airspace closure, never mind. Why did we do it? The government was asked why. They didn't have a good answer. First, we were told that there was some kind of security threat. Then we were told that they shot down a cartel drone. Then we learned it was a balloon, like from a party. It turns out the US military used an anti-drone laser against a balloon and didn't tell the FAA about it. So the FAA was like, there's anti-drone lasers being fired in our airspace. We should shut this down. But then when the FAA was asked, they were like, we don't fucking know what's going on. And then the DOD was like, we didn't shoot a balloon down. What are you talking about? Very competent stuff all around. But let's move on. We've got a lot of stuff to get through. Hey, Google, narc on me. Investigative journalists from whatever's left of the Washington Post found the Department of Homeland Security is pressuring Google to give over user information on a whim. A 67-year-old man from outside Philadelphia sent an email to the Department of Homeland Security pleading with them to be lenient on a deportation case that he had read about in the news. Quite literally just a citizen emailing a public office saying, hey, I'm voicing my opinion here. They then subpoenaed his Google account. The man opened his email and found a notification from Google that said, hey, just so as you know, we just gave your account information to the Department of Homeland Security after they sent us a subpoena. And no, we're not going to give you a copy of it. So from receiving an email from this guy, the Department of Homeland Security drew up a subpoena, didn't say anything to the guy, sent it to Google, got his account information, and he had no way to stop this from happening. The information that they handed over included his home address and his location history and his contacts. And then DHS agents showed up at his house to question him until they ultimately found that he didn't do anything wrong because obviously, as a reminder, with any corporate tech infrastructure, that includes Google Docs, do not use it for anything that you wouldn't be comfortable shouting into your local police precinct. This is exactly why. We've got more stuff though. Great jobs, y'all. Great jobs all around. Got the jobs report coming in hot. Got new jobs, like 80,000 new jobs from non-farm payrolls. Amazing. Good job, guys. Over the last year, we lost almost 900,000 jobs. So obviously the jobs report is hard to trust because Trump fired the person who was in charge of producing the jobs reports because he didn't like the numbers. And obviously we can't trust that. And also, it doesn't take an advanced economics degree to look around at the current US landscape for the job market and assess that it blows. It's pretty frequent for jobs reports to have these big corrections. What we saw was the month come in for the jobs report and then a correction for about a year-long period with more data to actually use as inputs to get actual accurate numbers. Whether or not those numbers are accurate still, we don't know, but they say that we lost about 900,000 jobs in the past year, which very, very much tracks. So yeah, there's that. We're going into a shutdown again, kind of, partially. The US government is shutting down the Department of Homeland Security. Fucking rejoice, everyone. Democrats and Republicans did not manage to come to an agreement to pass a budget for DHS, whose budget is through the fucking roof right now because they wanted to fund concentration camps. Cool stuff, guys. In the midst of the whole ICE rounding people up into detention camps and killing citizens on the street thing, the Democrats have said they want to reform ICE. And they're not gonna fund the DHS until they get common sense reforms for ICE. Also, abolishing ICE is the popular position now. Anyway, they did not do that. They didn't fund it. And now the DHS is closed. For how long, I don't know. But it's not like a full-scale government shutdown. It's not like everything is going away. It's just subdivisions of DHS, except for the TSA. It is at this point that I'm realizing that if you're not a member of the freest country in the world, you have no idea what the fuck I'm saying. Department of Homeland Security is the people who run border control. And the TSA is airport security. The TSA is apparently mostly considered essential, so they're largely going to be in operation unchanged. So no worries there. But also, the TSA is fucking bullshit too. So how could I forget? This should have been the headline. The Dow is over 50,000. Or at least it was recently. Pam Bondi was testifying in front of Congress, being grilled about a whole bunch of things, including the Epstein case. The hearing started off ridiculous and just continued to get more so, to the point that we now have historic record of a sitting Attorney General of the United States of America saying to a representative of Congress, and I quote, "You're a washed up loser lawyer." Bondi was essentially being asked questions that she couldn't answer, such as, why are you protecting pedophiles? And she didn't want to say because. So instead, she just went into full-on deflection mode to the point that she started saying just absurd shit. For example, the Dow is over 50,000, and that's what we should be talking about. The head of the justice system in the United States of America was like, why are you asking me questions about justice? We should be talking about the stock market doing well. Not a whole lot came from this, aside from just a bunch of screaming and everybody trying to get clips for social media. But goddamn, Pam Bondi was a mess in this hearing. But you know it wasn't a mess? The Dow. It was over 50,000. For those who don't know, the Dow is like a common reference point index of the stock market. Finance stuff. We're not done with just this fucking clown car of an administration, because we need to talk about RFK Jr.'s cocaine toilet. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the somehow head of Health and Human Services in the United States of America, I cannot believe that statement. He went on Theo Von's podcast and said that he's not afraid of germs because he did cocaine off of a toilet seat. I just want to fact check real quick. This is actually the most relatable that RFK has ever been. I'm not a cocaine off the toilet seat kind of guy myself, personally. But I get the energy. I understand it. But here's the thing. That's not the kind of energy that I want from the head of Health and Human Services, overseeing multiple measles outbreaks while advocating against getting the measles vaccine or vaccines. A few health agencies are calling for him to resign. That's not going to happen. But hey, bring back having elected officials not talking about their cocaine usage off of a toilet and then turning around and setting our health policy. We've got more. We're still going. While all of this is going on, over the past 4 weeks, there's been a massive sewage spill in the surrounding area around Washington, D.C., as sewage has been pouring into the C&O Canal and Potomac River. At time of recording, there's been an estimated 240 million gallons of raw sewage that's made its way into the Potomac, and apparently was made worse by a bit of the equipment that they've been using to try to clean everything up, getting destroyed by a huge wad of flushed wipes. Do not flush wipes, especially if they say flushable. They're not. At time of recording, there's not an issue with potable water from municipal systems, but they do say, hey, maybe don't go like swimming in the sewage. And also it smells pretty bad around the sewage, apparently, which I would assume this is an honestly massive ecological disaster, and the cleanup is expected to take basically the rest of the year at least. Last thing for government, and I did cut a few things for time, we're also posturing for war with Iran still, again. Trump has sent a second aircraft carrier to intimidate Iran during talks about nuclear stuff and Israel. The same fucking things that we're always talking to them about and bombing them about. The things that we're always bombing them about, too. There's a lot of rhetoric going around about free Iran and, like, yes, in the context of what the people there want. I don't think it's the United States' job to go in and do regime change in Iran. Again. So that's just a quick summary of some of the quirky little things that our little goobers are up to these days. I don't even know anymore. Let's move on. Artificial intelligence. Do I get money now? I said the words. You may have heard that there's a few companies out there trying to do AI stuff. They're advertising it a little bit, but I want to talk through the growing trend of these companies talking about their products as if it's some massive threat to humanity and an existential crisis for the world. I want to start real quick by just saying, when I say AI, I'm not actually referring to real conscious intelligence. It's just a shorthand to refer to these things that we're all kind of just labeling AI at this point. I hate that this stuff is called AI because it's not intelligence, but it's just easier to say AI. So let's just agree on that. OpenAI and Anthropic. They are the creators of ChatGPT and Claude, respectively, two of the biggest names in the AI space right now. Both of these companies are racing to an IPO. That's when a company is listed on the stock market and they get a huge payday. Think about how much money is currently flying around in all the AI spaces. And then think about how much money they have to gain from going to market and letting people buy in from the public. But also think about the risk of not being able to deliver on all of the promises that they've made. And so if you want to cash out, you got to be the first one to get to the market. Because if you're the second and people already know that it's not worth investing in, you're fucked. So we're seeing a whole lot of bluster from these companies about how powerful their systems are, to the point of being an existential threat to humanity. And yet these random CEOs are supposed to be the ones that we trust to manage these things. We've seen engineers thinking that these systems are sentient. Google fired someone over that. Anthropic even put out research about model welfare, worrying about the experiences and emotions of AI models. These are computer programs. This is not consciousness. There are two things happening here. One is marketing, and the other is genuine psychosis. So a lot of this is marketing. You're going to see headlines from journalists that either don't understand what they're talking about or took a big paycheck from one of these companies to write a big thing about how there's belief that these AIs are sentient. And it's always in the passive voice. There is belief that there is sentience here, not AI is sentient. It's a really effective marketing strategy if you're trying to get a ton of people to invest in your company. If you say, my company is so important that it cannot be ignored. Otherwise, it's a threat to humanity. So obvious marketing is super obvious, but the other part of this is kind of scarier, which is the genuine psychosis. You're maybe familiar with the stories of people falling in love with an AI chatbot or being driven to kill themselves by one. OpenAI recently pulled down ChatGPT 4.0, which is the model that most people were dating. It was the most intimate and malleable model. And so people were able to craft a partner, a character that they formed an unhealthy relationship with. And then the subscription tech service company took down their subscription service. And now people are experiencing genuine pain. That is a form of psychosis on the user's end. But on the other side, some of these developers truly believe that they are building God. It's a religion to them. It's the next phase of humanity. It's their version of colonizing things. They believe truly that they are building the next evolution of humanity, somewhere between Peter Thiel with uploading our consciousness. And so it's the intersection of marketing and genuinely profiting off people's confusion and psychosis, and that's terrifying and gross. At the end of the day, these are just computer programs. They're just rolling a bunch of dice, taking random numbers, and then checking a big ol' reference sheet and trying to produce output that's somewhat congruent with the input, with a bunch of randomness thrown in. It's a bit more complicated than that, but ultimately, that's basically all that's happening. It's not making decisions based on anything but prior inputs that it's been given to try to follow. Anyway, it's not intelligence. It's just software. Lightning round. Iraqi customs detained a package that they thought might have had ancient historical significance. It turns out that it was a collector's edition of Claire Obscura Expedition 33. The CEO of Salesforce made a joke about ICE monitoring his employees. His employees were not very happy with that joke. An AI feature update for Notepad on Windows 11 added a massive security vulnerability. Yet again, it seems like omega-3 is very good for you. It now seems like there's a link between omega-3 and a reduced chance of early onset dementia. Mr. Beast acquired a banking app. Mr. Banks. Not content with just staying in the US, North London now has an outbreak of measles with at least 60 children in the area being infected. After 88 years, Gallup will no longer track presidential approval rating. They say this has nothing to do with political pressure from the presidency. And finally for today, it's Britney, bitch, as Britney Spears has sold the license to all of her music for about $200 million. I am also selling the license to all of my music for $200 million, if anyone's interested. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Stuff Keeps Happening. Head to skh.news for sources, bonus content, and the entire library of Britney Spears music, because I bought the license. My name is Endeavorance. We'll talk again soon. Take care and be well.